Hey guys, how's it going? So just to show you where I got to last time, we're working on the self-detection for the networking. So if I show splines, and now bring this around, we've got the detection working for splines that overlap themselves. And it seems to be working pretty good. And the next kind of high level stage that we need to get to is to actually have the ability to split the segments at those points. And I want that method to be able to be used for situations like this, where the segments overlap themselves, but also for situations like this, where we have other segments overlapping them. So I want that method to be used for both situations. But that's kind of where we're at the moment. So we've got some basic detection going on. And we're getting close to the point where we're actually going to do something with that detection. Now, I've started planning out how we're actually going to split the segments up. So we'll have the split segment at location and index. And that's going to take in the actual location where the index was found and the index of the segment of the spline where we're going to cut the segment. So yeah, it will need to take in the location. It will need to take in the first index of the control point that makes up the pair of segments. We then need to create a new spline component. So the way the segments look, they're basically a spline and a data asset. So what we're trying to do is create a second spline and then create a new segment with that spline. So we need to create a new spline component. Make sure the new spline component is clear so it doesn't have any kind of initial points. Then the first point should be set to location. Yeah, so where we found the intersect, that will be the first control point of the new spline. We then need to take the tail of the original spline and add that to the new one. Then create a new segment with that spline, so initialize it with that. So that should give us the new segment. Then on the original segment we need to cut that remainder. So we need to delete everything from the original index +1, and then where that intersect was, we add that as a control point to the original spline to be the new end of that original segment. And then we can return the new segment. So then we should have the original segment plus a new one where it's split in the same location. So that's kind of roughly how that's going to work. As for how we're currently getting the intersect info, so at the moment this intersect info is set up to take 2 indices, because we originally made it for when we're checking intersects on splines that overlap themselves. But I want to update that just to be a single pair. Then that means I need to update this intersect self to return an array of intersect infos, which will generally be 2. So where it intersects itself, it'll have an intersect for the first segment and then intersect info for the second segment. then that way we can use the intersect info for the other splines. And then this is just a placeholder method at the moment, it's not actually doing anything. So then we'll actually be able to start implementing that. At least the signature is pretty much good to go. And the way I'm probably going to deal with this is, instead of it just having a single intersect info being passed into it, we'll have an array of intersect info. The does intersect self method update to add new intersect infos to it. And yeah, that should be all good, I believe. Just do that. Cool. All right. And I think what I'll do is I will, instead of overwriting this one, I'll create a second method with the same name, just with a different input. So let's go to definition. We'll just minimize there. Just close some of the stuff that we don't need. Alright, so let's go to the header. So all does intersect self, and we want it to take an array of intersect info and that's going to be reference. Yeah, so instead of, yeah, that's fine. And set this as deprecated. For the most part, I'll just copy and paste this for now. Okie dokie. So, first thing, okay, get rid of that. So let's make sure intersect info is empty. Okay. So check the control points. We iterate over the control points. You check between the two pairs. Do a line intersection. When we find one, we have an intersect info. Okay, so this is what we're going to update here. So we'll ditch this. So we're going to create a new intersect info and add it to the referenced array here. So segment intersect info. Okay. So b intersect equals true. Yeah. So we need to do one for both I and j. and then make sure to add those to the intersect infos. Okay. This is going to get renamed just to that. Then this is going to be for J. And we're going to drop. Drop that for a second. That's going to be dropped. And this should just be that. Just delete that now. Then what do we actually call that? And then we need to do for each. And that should be ready to rock. Check that compiles. And the result should be the same as what we had a moment ago. hopefully that's still working. Yeah, cool. So we're still getting that intersect. Cool. Alright. So that's working good. What that means is we can now ditch that. We can ditch that. That's fine. And then in the segment, we should be able to get rid of that and ditch that. And delete this. Alrighty then. So the thing that is going to be a little bit tricky is when we're splitting a segment that overlaps itself. So when we do the first split, it's going to create a new segment. So I'm going to do this then. So we kind of want to do one split and then restart the detection. Let's have a look where we actually initially create it. So we update the network. We have our updated segments. So just to illustrate what I'm on about, so let's say we've got that. So we've got our segments here, and we find this segment and this segment. And so we want to split the spline twice. here. And at the moment this is one segment. However, when we run that initial split on the first segment here, the rest of this spline is going to be a new segment. So that original intersection is no longer valid. So what we probably need to do is only do the first one, then once we've done that we can check again for intersects. So there might have to be some kind of loop where do self-intersect, split, self-intersect, split, something along the lines of that. However, the problem that will cause is because that will now be one section like that, then another section like that, and so now the collision detection won't really work that well, because it's not actually overlapping itself and it's not overlapping the original one. So this is a little bit of a problem. So what we might need to do instead is split a segment up in multiple places in one pass. So we take our original segment, let's take this for example, we then generate the new splines based on that. So we keep the original one and we generate one, two, and then three. So we have our new spline components. We then create new segments with each of those new spline components, and then once those are created on the original segment, we can then update the original spline to that. Yeah, so I think that's how that's going to work. So let's see. So that does mean we'll need we'll probably want a split segment to take an array of intersect info. instead of doing a separate split for each one, so it'll work on a presumption it's working on one segment. It will take into account multiple intersects. Yeah, I think that's going to be the best way to do it. So let's just we're going to call it split segment at insects. So we're going to take that. We're going to iterate over each of the intersect infos. Then need to for each one we need to create a new spline. We need to generate the new spline info, but leave original spline intact. Once we've then created all the new splines, we can then update the original spline. We can then create the well, I can do that before or after really. Create the new segments. Okay. So we're going to remove this. Right. So original spline segment. We then generate the new splines, like so. We then generate the new segments with those new splines. Then on the original segment, update the original spline. Yeah, that kind of makes sense. Alrighty. So this is going to change a little bit. And it's going to take an array of intersect info. The rest of the signature will be the same. So it's just returning the new segments that are going to be created. Okay, then this can be deprecated. Okay. Which means here, instead of looping over, just do that. And then get rid of that. Make sure that compiles. Ooh, error. What's going on here? Overload map function not found. Oh. Get rid of that. Okay, cool. Okay, so we should temporarily original spline, then loop over each intersection, generate new spline from each intersection. So the next issue then is we need to actually cut the new spline there as well. So this isn't actually going to work. It's a similar problem we were dealing with before. not going to do that. So it's a similar issue running into again. So let's say we've got similar intersection. We make the first cut, but we need to know where the next one is. Otherwise we're going to make that. Then we'll make that. And they're going to overlap each other. So I think potentially may need to go back to only doing a single intersection at a time, and then rerunning the detection. But then we run into that same issue where it's not necessarily going to be an intersection then, because it's now just going to be that. And that. And so it won't actually, the lines aren't overlapping each other. So this is difficult. It's an awkward one to deal with. Yeah, not too sure how I'm going to deal with that. Yeah. Great. Well, if you guys got any ideas, do let me know. I'm not sure how to deal with this situation. It's quite tricky. The only other thing I'm thinking is we need to somehow keep track of the start and end of each segment. So as we iterate through the intersections, we keep track of them. We need to know where the index of the next one is. So for example, if it was, well, this for example, so our first one is between these two control points. And the next one in the array would be between these two. So when we make this segment, we need to know this index of the next intersection. Or the other way of doing this is okay, so the other way of doing this is clear this. We have our original spline, and we have our array of intersections, so we have two there. We then iterate over those intersections and create a new spline that goes all the way to the end. So we'll have that as our base spline. On the first iteration, we'll create the next section. On the next iteration, we'll split that new spline. Off of that second one. Yeah. However, that's going to shift the indices over. So we're going to have to keep track of shifting indices. So, because as we generate the new spline, instead of this being like 3, it's now going to be like 1 on this new one. And then same with this, instead of this being like 10 over here, it's going to be like 1. So we're going to have to figure out a way to, as we work our way along it, those indices are going to shift. Which means we probably need to keep track of where the previous index was. Where's the last one? Let's see. Yeah, so we need to keep track of, if this was like index 3, we then need to, on the next intersect info, we need to minus, we need to take that away from that, because we'd be making a new control point here. Yeah, it'd be something to do with the index of the previous intersection will shift the index of the next intersection to account for the fact we've cut a spline. So the indices of this next spline will change. Or actually, do we need to do any of this? Yeah, we do. Yeah, because okay. Well, I'm gonna try and get my head wrapped around this. I think I've roughly got the idea of it, but I just need to take a little bit of time just to really think it over. It's a little bit complicated, but I think I'm going down the right path with this idea. So we'll progressively make those cuts into the spline. That'll give us the individual sections, and then we can edit the original spline once we've generated the new ones. Cool. Alright, so yeah, didn't get a whole lot done today. Bit of planning stuff, but there you go, that's what happens. It's not all about just going straight in there and writing loads of code. When you get into difficult stuff like this, that's just what you need to do. Either open up Paint or Notepad or a doodle pad and just doing some brainstorming, really. That's kind of how it goes. Yeah, just watching, and I'll see you next time.